All right, so today I'm going to be reacting to a clip. I actually called into Timcast in his Uncensored show, and I had a really long conversation with him, and I feel as though he strawmanned some of my points. I feel as though he didn't address a lot of the things I said directly, and I want to go back and react to the clip with you guys, and as well as give my commentary in between some of the points, because I was a caller. I'm not really supposed to interject as much as I did. I try to get my point across as much as I can, but ultimately it is his show. I'm supposed to just call in, ask my question, and get out of there. But I am thankful for what I was able to get out, and I am thankful for the time that they let me be on there. I was on there for about 20-25 minutes. Overall, great conversation, and I'll break it down throughout this video. Without further ado, let's go ahead and start. Let's get into it.
So Timcast IRL pre-production starts usually at 7:15, and it is probably 90% just me sitting here being like, here are the big stories, and then I'll ask people, and they're like, what do you think the big story is? Some days I don't. Some days I'm literally just like, I know what the big stories are, and then I line it all up in 10 minutes, and I'm like, here are the stories that we have, because I'm plugged in the news all day. So as long as you're...
Tim, that question I asked about Cash Patel wasn't my main question. My follow-up question, I wanted to start it off with something light, because my next question is to actually combat something that you've been repeating lately. You made a comment last week on the after show about a lack of news and people not aggregating news. You also made recent comments on Twitter about news not being aggregated. I don't believe that to be correct at all. I think there's a plethora of stories that have yet to be covered. I have 10 right here I could list off for you. And I just want to know, what can people do to get out of their bubble? I mean, it seems like you may have found yourself in one even, and I love watching your show. I've watched it for years. But what do you do, and what do those on the panel do to go outside of their bubble for information?
So let me stress that when I was discussing the shortage of news, that is a fact phenomenon. It's not something that is my opinion or made up. There was a massive amount of aggregator sources in the 2010s that have gone out of business. Most people are now just spam blasting TikTok. The amount of websites that existed in the past that were producing content by scouring the depths of the internet and writing about them has dramatically reduced. It's not an issue of the bubble. You'll notice that everything's relatively homogenized. So
what Tim brings up there is actually one of the main points of contention between him and I just fully disagree with that statement. There are more people disseminating information across the internet. I'm sorry, Tim, maybe just don't look at TikTok. That's why I tried to ask him, how does he get out of the bubble that he can sometimes find himself in? There have been times in my life where I get stuck into a bubble and I'm just getting constant feedback of things I want to hear. I'm not in one of those right now, but that was my question to him. How does he know that he's not in a bubble just getting a feedback loop of things he wants to hear? What does he do to get outside of that bubble? Ultimately, that question never gets answered throughout this video, unfortunately. Maybe I can call in again and ask it in a less contentious way. But he says that there's less disseminators of information. There's less people scouring the internet and writing up stories. That's just simply not true. There's more people than ever that are doing that. They're just not working for these major news companies. And even then, he's going to make a point here in just a second that I'll cover as well. But he even makes a point about mainstream media sources not disseminating news or not allocating news properly. But we'll get into that right now.
So there's a handful of stories that you can find when you start scouring local news. And what was happening before is when you had this... It's because Facebook basically nuked monetization. In the late 2000s, people started making money on Facebook with articles. In the 2010s, it was fucking gangbusters. The Daily Wire was doing hundreds of millions of dollars. That's how they got started. In their first few years, they were making insane amounts of money by getting their articles shared on Facebook. So what happens is a bunch of companies pop up. They hire big staffs, and those staff start scouring the entirety of the world for content. You get a bunch of these aggregator websites. It's technically aggregator, but what's happening is a writer will go to like local, bumfuck news, find an interesting story about a murder, and then post it. So these stories were everywhere. Facebook monetization got nuked. These companies all started going under, and now these massive newsroom staffs have evaporated. A lot of this was original reporting, and a lot of it was aggregation. and it's gone now. Facebook monetization is just completely obliterated over the past 5 years. So one of the easiest examples is that I'm not going to name all the companies, but Vox and Huffington Post used to mass produce a lot of content. But here's the easiest example. I'll do this right now. The Daily Mail used to have thousands of stories every single day. Look at their headline story. Beautiful young family shattered after dad forgot about 5-month-old baby boy in hot car. That's their lead, their banner, their flagship. I mean, it's a tragic story, but that is not international news. Daily Mail is a British company. This is not an international story. That's what they've opted for. You got Sydney Sweeney, and then now take a look at this. M exclusive, M exclusive, M exclusive, M exclusive, exclusive, exclusive. Whenever you see the M plus, exclusive. The stories on the Daily Mail no longer talk about, they no longer have this massive reach across the board. The stories have become largely recycled, regurgitated drama and hot topic bullshit.
Ultimately, my question was centered around Tim's statements about disseminators of news and news being aggregated out to people. And his example is, of course, bringing up the Daily Mail, which is a UK, news site. Which, sure, that's fine. That's fair to use a UK news site. I like using The Independent. They're also from the UK. But I don't think that was a good example. He brings up the Daily Mail, then shows their top headline like it's supposed to be some big thing. If anything, that just adds credence to my argument, or more credit to my argument, because the Daily Mail should have a better homepage article. That should not be their homepage article. The first thing when I pull up the Daily Mail, it should not be about a baby that died in a hot car. Maybe, just maybe, it should be about the organ harvesting. Just maybe, it should be about the payment processors trying to prevent us from buying video games and trying to censor us online. Could be about that. It could be about the recent story I did on Carl J, who's trying to have his house stolen by his local government. There's a lot of stories. The Breonna Taylor story got updated recently. The officer there got 33 months, even though he killed her, and they literally never should have entered that building where she was. Crazy story there. A lot of crazy stories, but we'll respond to that more. And what Tim says, that the Daily Mail used to have thousands of articles that they would post and put out to people. Well, he's got a good point. These companies aren't hiring hundreds of people anymore to go and look for news and scour the internet. Why? Because these people are doing it themselves on their own social media accounts. You have people on X, you have people on Facebook, Instagram, he even brings up TikTok. People are doing news themselves. And that was kind of the whole point of me asking this question to Tim, because lately I've been upset with Tim. He has been complaining about the lack of news being aggregated and disseminated, but he himself has a very large platform to disseminate news. So if he has an issue with certain stories not getting out there, he himself should be talking about them. But there's more points I can react to that we'll get into further in this video. The last thing I'll say on this particular segment is there are more places to get news than ever before, and there are more people getting you that news than ever before. Tim should take his own advice and stop looking at the mainstream media so much.
Journalism. It's worse than journalism. Journalism was actually aggregating a story. So you had a bunch of local news, things that were interesting. One story that I'm looking at is a sex offender got arrested and then released right away in $1, and then the feds are now trying to come in and charge him. Local news was being aggregated and original reporting was being done. In the late 2010s, there was this alarm raised by a bunch of reporters where they said a lot of the corruption stories you get, say about local Democrats or Republicans committing corruption, those would go viral, but it was a $40,000 a year small town journalist who uncovered it and then reported it in their paper, which got picked up by an aggregator or by a network. Those don't exist anymore. So now you are largely just getting mass, homogenized information. And then here's another really great example. If we are to hire a news team to try and replicate this, we had a news team. It didn't work and make money. Why? The moment we publish original reporting, Libs of TikTok, Planet of Memes, Clown World, Benny Johnson, you name it, Colin Rugg, boom, on their page with millions of views, and we don't make a single fucking penny. However, we are the ones that get sued over it. So we shut it down. We can't make money doing it. It's not working, and so we're over it. We can't be done.
So right here, I actually do agree with a lot of what Tim is saying in this part. I fully agree. People like Clown World, people like Live the TikTok, all these other accounts on X and things of that nature, they will do that. They absolutely were doing that. Tim did have a news company that he tried to start, and that's exactly what happened. He would go and hire these people, they would go and write news articles for him, and then no one would come to his site. Everyone would rip all of that information, repost it on their site or repost it on their social media, but it all falls back on Tim. So if anything Tim got wrong, if there's anything that Tim got wrong, if there is anything, it all falls on him. So I fully understand that. I fully get that. That wasn't the point of my question, though. I understand why he goes off into that sort of direction, talking about making a legit news company, but that had nothing to do with my question. I had no questions about that. I'm in full agreement with him here. I'm not telling Tim to make a news company. What I'm saying is to use his platform that he already has established to disseminate more important news stories than what he currently has been talking about. One of the major examples I brought up recently is why focus on something like Sydney Sweeney's jeans when you could bring up, like, I keep bringing up the RFK story, but we'll move away from that one. Instead of bringing up the Gene ad, maybe you could bring up the story of Breonna Taylor, where the cop that killed her only got 33 months. Just an example. That's just an example of one story that Tim could change, where I don't think it would affect his numbers all that much. And the Breonna Taylor story, I know, is a story that he cares about. So that was just an example of a story that he could swap out. But what he's saying here about a news company and people just ripping all that stuff for free and then using it for their own accounts and stuff like that, I'm in full agreement with Tim on that. I'm not telling Tim to make a news company. I'm telling him to use his platform.
There are stories to be found. They exist. There are stories happening every day. But it is a fact phenomenon that journalism has largely dried up relative to what it used to be.
So what I would have to add to that is the stories that I have pulled up aren't local, well, some of them are state related, but I mean, have you guys even mentioned the RFK Jr. organ harvesting scandal? Like, do you guys know about that? That's over a week old.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that story is absolutely horrifying. I wish it would be spoken about more. And you're talking about stories that are on the front pages of news sites, and I feel like they also should be criticized, because stories like that should be on the front page. This should be something that people are talking about more. The story, if you read the one from The Independent specifically, that one is absolutely horrific. It talks about a guy holding his knees to his chest and shaking his head no as they try to continue the procedure to harvest his organs.
But
Jesus Christ.
But I will stress on this. You're basically stating, why won't people talk about a story that no one's talking about? You're saying, like, this is a story I think is important. Why aren't more people talking about it? Which is the phenomenon of all news media for all of time. And so the issue is you're finding your interests aren't aligned with what my interests were in the past, perhaps. And so you're saying, like, here's a story you could have covered. Indeed. Nobody cared. I can take a look at my YouTube feed and tell you what subjects people care about and don't care about. And the reality is I will still talk about something that maybe a lot of people don't care about because I think it's important. But you can go the Benny Johnson route and get 500,000 in every video and be the fastest growing YouTube channel in politics, talking about what you know people talk about. You can be Steve Bannon, who in his profile said he watches all of his comments and makes sure he's only talking about what his audience wants to be talked about. Those are options. Me, I read the news and talk about things that I think are interesting or important.
If anything,
I had friends help me put together this question, and I actually have a friend that is responding to that exact statement you made. Asmongold has 168,000 views on a video 2 hours ago that he just made an update on regarding the Visa and MasterCard issue, where they're trying to prevent us from buying video games and stuff. Like, why not talk about a story like that?
Asmongold is one of the most famous pro gamers in the world, and I'm a political personality who covered conflict and crisis and now political cultural issues. So it's like, this story is passively on my radar about gaming. Sometimes I talk about it, and you're asking why Asmongold, who's got, 5 million followers? And
he got his start in gaming.
And he's one of the most famous pro gamers in the world talking about gaming.
And what you choose to cover on a regular basis will
end up kind of coloring your audience, right? So there's things that I like that we don't talk about just because I know that our audience that we've cultivated, like on PCC, they're not going to care because we have an audience that's looking for specific types of things. Now, what you're seeing, I think, is for you specifically, if these stories mean a lot to you and you're going to have strong opinions on it, this is the stuff you should be covering. And then the more you cover it, perhaps the passion you have to talk about it will inspire somebody else in a way that perhaps a written story wouldn't. So perhaps the story finds more relevance as more people like you cover something that's not getting covered.
I'll put it this way. If Asmongold talks about the same story as me, he gets 1 million views. I get 200,000.
That's what I mean. It's not, and I didn't mean to just bring up a gaming-related news story. He talks about other news stories as well that he gets a lot of views on. So I'm just wondering, why talk about a gene ad as opposed to talk about organ harvesting? I feel like you, as someone who has a large platform, you can aggregate news yourself while you complain about the lack of news aggregation. I don't know. It's just I love watching your content. I want to hear your opinions on these things.
People want to hear their ideas come out of your mouth, Tim.
Exactly. You're saying, Tim, why won't you cover the stories I think are important?
And that's essentially what Tim's argument boils down to, is he believes that I want him to cover stories that I care about. Sure, that's one way to look at things, but it's more so I was coming at this from the perspective that Tim has recently been complaining about news not being covered, news not being delegated, aggregated, disseminated, however you want to say it. News isn't getting around to people, and Tim was complaining about that. He was also complaining about news sites not posting as many articles and stuff like that. So my whole point of my question was, Tim, news is still getting aggregated. You're complaining that it's not being aggregated while also talking about stories I feel as though aren't very important. So he does bring up a good point. Technically, I am asking him to cover things that I find important. But the reason I find them important is because I see the ramifications of them, and I believe them to have vast ramifications for the entire United States population, especially when you talk about the organ harvesting scandal. That wasn't a state issue. That wasn't a local community issue. That was a nationwide thing that affects everybody. More than 60% of the United States population is an organ donor. So yes, it affects more than half the population. That was the whole point of my story. And Tim also brings up, he said he could talk about things and then get less views. If you're worried about views, Tim, that's fine, that's fair, but you said that you're talking about stories that you care about. I just assumed that this would be a story you care about. I did not assume that this is just something that I care about. That, I guess it is my fault for assuming that people should care about organs being harvested from people that shouldn't be dead. I shouldn't assume things like that. I apologize. And they also go on to say again that I'm trying to get them to cover things that I care about. That's not the point of what I said. The point of what I said is I feel as though Tim has found himself in some sort of bubble. He's complaining about news not being delegated. He has a show that he does every night where he could delegate some of these news stories, even if he brings them up for 2, 3, maybe 5 minutes. And he has some other points that he goes into about, maybe he doesn't want to bring up the RFK story because they don't want to bring everyone down. They're trying to have a fun show. And sure, but they constantly bring up topics that bring the show down a little bit because it's important news. So that was the whole point of me bringing that up. And I still need to find the segment where Tim actually mentions the RFK Jr. stuff, because they said that they had seen it or they mentioned it or talked about it. I haven't seen that, because it is a massive story. It's huge.
Like, bro, Asmongold is one of the biggest personalities online. He gets more search volume than the president. And it's like Asmongold has a massive following from being a pro gamer. It's a general audience. He started talking about cultural, political issues. And I mean this all due respect. His view on a lot of these things is very surface level because he's a pro gamer with a pro gamer audience. For a lot of people who aren't really paying attention all that much, he's talking about a lot of the exact same things, but he's going to get massive amounts of viewership. If the argument is I should make videos that appeal to a much smaller audience because I can't be Asmongold, I should retire now. Like the Sydney Sweeney ad is a trending topic that people want to hear opinions about.
Yeah.
If I make a video, bro, I can make a video about the current conflict in Ukraine because no one's talking about it, get 40,000 views, make no money, and go out of business. Like, this is the reality of the business. There used to be a bunch of aggregators, and there were 50,000 stories, and there were much less channels. And now I have to compete with a pro gamer who has an audience guaranteed to him by pro gaming that I will never compete with.
It's like Moist Critical makes a video with like a title that makes no sense and gets 10 million views.
Yeah, that's just it. I'm not Asmongold. Yeah. Asmongold enters my arena with a massive general audience, and he's going to get 1 million views on every video. My response can't be, let me try talking about things no one's paying attention to, because then Google buries me. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on longer, but I don't want to hold up the other caller.
But I mean, the other key component once again is, why won't Tim talk about things that I think are important? But that's just it. I mean,
but if you talk
I
about
think that's
stuff,
a straw man. I look through news every day like you do. I have to do a show as well, and
that's not a straw man. You literally asked why I didn't cover a story you thought was more important. You're literally saying what I just said. Why won't Tim talk about the things I think are important?
And Tyler,
that's what you're asking me.
You actually hit me up on Twitter to be like, hey, Phil, how come you don't talk about this? So, like, I mean, Tim is actually pointing at something. You're calling in and saying, how come you haven't talked about these things? And they're things that you feel that are important. And, you know, more power to you. There's nothing wrong with you having, you know, things that you would want to talk about. But, you know, hitting up other people and being like, you should talk about this. You should talk about this. You really are saying, hey, you should talk about, I think these things are important, and you should talk about the things that I think are important.
So again, in my comment there, I point out that they're absolutely straw manning what I'm saying. The story that I'm bringing up is about organ harvesting. This is a massive story talking about government corruption, government within the medical industry. You can branch this conversation off into so many different directions. Just look at what happened during COVID, and then you couple it with the fact that they've been murdering people for years to harvest their organs. Just stories like that. There's a lot of different ways that this story can branch off, and it seems like it would be exactly in Tim's wheelhouse because he loves talking about things that the government has done wrong. So I was under the assumption that maybe they just didn't see this story. Maybe the story is going under the radar. Maybe they're getting distracted by Obama and Epstein. So yes, I was trying to contact Phil. I was trying to contact Tim, Luke, the Quartering. I was trying to contact all these different people that I enjoy watching because I wanted to get their opinion on the matter. I thought it was a story that it was just going under the radar, but lo and behold, apparently the story is known. They just don't care. And I find it baffling to find that out. I didn't go into this thinking, oh, they aren't talking about something that I care about. I went into this with the assumption, Tim's saying that there's no news, but here's a story that he missed. I thought he missed the story, not that he didn't care about it. And that was my mistake. My mistake was that I assumed he missed the story, when in actuality, he saw the story, he just didn't care. And again, they're saying that I'm trying to get them to talk about stories that I care about. It has nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with that. Me does not enter this equation. Okay, that was the funny part, is they kept trying to make it about, oh, I want them to talk about something that I care about. No, I was trying to get news to Tim because Tim has been repeatedly complaining about a lack of news. So I took it upon myself as a fan to try and get news to him that I thought he would find important. That was the whole point of me reaching out to Tim, reaching out to Phil, reaching out to Luke the Quartering. I was reaching out to these people because Tim was complaining about a lack of news. I was trying to get him that news. So this straw man of me trying to get them to cover things that I care about is just that. It's a straw man. It's not actually addressing my question. Again, keep in mind, my question to Tim and the entire panel was, how do you get yourself out of a bubble, and how do you know when you're in one? That was the overall question. Again, never gets addressed, and they ultimately just straw man a lot of what I say.
I mean,
I'm well aware of the Visa MasterCard story and trying to shut down porn content, and they're threatening Steam and all of that stuff. And I go through all the stories every day, and then I talk about things that I think are important.
or even
I just want to quickly insert here that if anything good came from my call last night, it is at least this. The statement that Tim just made, he's wrong. And he knows he's wrong because he actually just did a segment while I'm editing this on that exact topic, because it is way more than what he's talking about. It is not porn, and it's not games including porn. It is games that include adult content, whatever that means. And you can stretch that to mean things like Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, and any of these other gory type of games. So it is a major, massive friggin' issue, and I'm glad that Tim came around on it and read past the title on some of these articles. Go check out his segment today where he covers it much more thoroughly, and he should have been doing it sooner. I'm just glad that if anything good came from my call, it's at least this. He's talking about it now.
Or even I sent Tim and I just sent you an article like earlier during the show about how Amazon is backing Fable and Showrunner to start creating an AI focused streaming
We have
service.
it pulled up. We didn't get to
which
it.
is something where it's like we could talk about that on our show, but the audience we've cultivated and what we've decided to talk about on our channel just doesn't lean into that because my expertise isn't in AI. So a lot of times if somebody goes in to talk about something, if they don't feel like it's super important, they're not going to be able to bring much to it outside of just general thoughts, like what you're talking about with Asmongold. He has an interest in that specific area.
I think, for instance, that the AI story is one of the biggest and most important stories, and we get no views on it.
Yeah.
So it's like every time we do an AI story, it's me being like, guys, you need to know about this. And then people are like, I ain't fucking clicking that. And so then YouTube punishes us, stops recommending videos, and that's the nature of the game. So I can say, okay, I don't really care about this story. Let's do it anyway because maybe it'll get views, and then you can't because you can't compete with, you know, Benny or Asmongold. You know, we're not going to do AI photos of Obama crying and throwing a phone at you or anything like that. We did a couple gags. The other thing is too is funny because we do A/B testing on thumbnails, and so I have more emoting faces, and I was like, that's what people click.
Yeah.
That's it. I you know, because Mr. Beast was like, I'm not going to keep my mouth open anymore, and it's like. I picked three frames from the video that I think are like I used to just let it be whatever frame it was. So sometimes I was making goofy ass faces, and then you can actually see that in the data people will not click it. So then YouTube rolled out A/B testing. You can put up three thumbnails. So we actually tried several times doing thumbnails. They all fail every single time. Thumbnails do not work for me for whatever reason, and it's because the audience you have. It's not random people. It is a specific subset of people that have been they've been coalesced over time. So the audience on the Timcast news channel will not click a thumbnail that they don't recognize. So it has to be me in frame with a Timcast frame with the article, or they will not click on it. And then the ones they end up clicking on are the ones where my mouth is open.
Also, like your story about RFK, like there's a whole subset of creators who are going to cover the Maha stuff, who that is important to, who have an audience of which that do find those stories to be important, but everybody kind of aggregates based on whatever that creator's idea of important to them is. So
well, this is it. We've got a bunch of AI stories. We didn't get to them, and they always fail miserably. They always do some of the lowest numbers imaginable, even though it's one of the biggest stories in the world. It's one of the most apocalyptic stories. We've got one about parents raising their kid with ChatGPT. You mentioned
I talked about that one earlier. That one's crazy.
And no one will click on it. Nobody will listen to it. Nobody fucking cares. So we've done so many AI segments, and no one ever fucking watches it.
Either.
So I'm not going to sell asparagus flavored ice cream to people. I told this to my buddy 20 years ago. He was playing in a band, and they were doing trip hop trap. And I was like, bro, your music is great for what it is, but you're asking people to buy asparagus-flavored ice cream. They just want chocolate, okay? If you want to sell a lot of ice cream, sell chocolate ice cream. Now, I can be a purist and say, you know what? I'm not playing their fucking game. And then you cease to exist. Yeah. So it's like if you got a company that makes ice cream, you can be like, why the fuck are we doing vanilla? Vanilla just was decided I'm going to put this plant extract with sugar in my cream? Bull fucking shit. No more vanilla. And then nobody comes anymore. The nature of business, so you got to find that balance, which means we still do AI stories, even though I know people won't click on them because it's one of the most important things to talk about, but people don't want to listen to it. They don't care. They don't give a shit about AI.
They won't actually click on it or care about it until it impacts them.
And it doesn't.
Yeah.
So they don't.
Yet.
And that's the same thing about the organ harvesting story. It doesn't affect the average person. It's not political. It's not ratings. It's not their children. It is nothing in their life. It is just shock content. It's like
This is actually where I wanted to address this point directly. Tim says that people don't care about this. This doesn't affect people. This isn't political. He's just wrong. Over 60% of the U.S. population is an organ donor. any one of those people that get into an accident and need care in a hospital could have their care altered so that they could get their organs and keep their organs. Because the way that doctors treat you will be different based on whether or not they see that organ donor check mark. Because if you are an organ donor, they're going to try and keep your organs safe as well as try to keep you safe. But if they're just focused on keeping you safe, they'll give you other medications that might have, adverse effects on some of your organs, but they're trying to save your life. But they won't give you that medication. They'll give you different care so that they can keep your organs nice and pristine while still trying to save you, but that lessens your odds. Do you ever want that going through your mind? Do you ever want that as a scenario going through your mind? And this is absolutely political because this is both parties. Both parties are doing this. Joe Biden, if Tim actually took a moment to go and read through these articles, Joe Biden, his administration had a committee on this exact situation, this RFK organ harvesting thing that he uncovered. The commission that Joe Biden had under his administration came to the conclusion that there was nothing wrong. This is absolutely political, and this absolutely does have far-reaching effects for every American citizen. Every single person I have told this story to has cared a great deal about this story, and it's usually followed up by, I should go to the DMV and take myself off the donor list. Seems like a lot of people care about this. It really does. Every single person I've talked to seems to care about this, and it's not a small story. It does affect people. It affects a lot of people. It affects more than half the U.S. population. And it's also political. If that's one of the points that Tim wants to bring up, it is absolutely political. And yes, it's absolutely shock content. This should be shocking to people. You should be shocked to discover that you or your family's life could be put in jeopardy by a doctor because they want to keep your organs for someone else. That's a massive story, and everyone should care about it. Not just me. It's not a me story that I care about. This affects everybody. You get into a car accident, you have something bad happen to you, this directly affects you. This is not about me. Never was.
It's like, wow, this is a terrifying story. And so what the average person is looking at is, Sydney Sweeney, why is it important? Because woke lost. Yeah. And the reaction to it is because there's a trending phenomenon where people are falling for a hoax, which exemplifies the inverse Bud Light effect. It massively impacts lots of people, and so it's something people should know about. And the point is, news doesn't exist anymore. No one needs me to say Sydney Sweeney did a campaign ad, because the moment the ad dropped, everyone on TikTok, Instagram, and X told them about it. Yep. The only thing you have to offer right now is insight. And so on the trending topic, people are saying, what does this mean? That's what we have to offer. But news is dead.
And there is such a thing as where a story gets to be so morbid that people just don't watch. Like, we cover a lot on TikTok on our channel, but do you remember when the people were doing the subway surfing and then people were like falling off the top of the subway?
Yeah.
Like, when it gets to be so serious where awful things are happening, people just don't click on it. They don't want to, it's outside the realm of, especially depending on your show and your tone, and you're like, normally your show's light and you're laughing, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, and by the way, this guy jumped on top of a train and then fell off and died. It's like, there's more to it than I guess I see your point, because you're talking about aggregation, but if you're talking about the focus of a show and the creation of a show, tone and order matters because it creates the flow for the entirety of it. So it's like, if you were to do the RFK story and you do it like at the end after you've done two lighter stories, people are like, what the fuck?
Here's the other
What Brett's mentioning here is also correct. What he's saying here is that people don't want to come to Tim's show every day and just see tragedy. They don't want to come to the show and look at just terrible things going on in the world, which is absolutely fair. That's completely reasonable. I agree. I don't want to come to Tim's show every day and first thing he talks about is some massive tragedy. But Tim is complaining about a lack of news, and also he has opened the show multiple times with stories about mass casualty events and mass tragedies. It's not something foreign to his show. Maybe, I think Brett is talking more in terms of pop culture crisis. If we're talking about Pop Culture Crisis, which is the show that Brett runs, he's 100% correct. I wouldn't be able to argue any of the points that he just made if we were talking about Pop Culture Crisis. We were talking about Timcast IRL, a topical news show, which does cover breaking news. And if the breaking news at the time is a massive tragedy, Tim will cover it. So that was kind of my point. Tim keeps complaining about a lack of news. Well, here's a massive story that has massive ramifications for everyone in the United States, and it is a tragedy. That was more of my point, but I do get what he's saying. You don't want to come to the show every day and just look at bad things happening. Every once in a while, you just want to have a laugh. Or maybe not every once in a while. Maybe it's the other way around. Every once in a while, you want to see the tragedy. Most of the time, you just want to laugh. That's probably most people. And that's fair. I do the same on my show. I bring up stories, have a laugh. We talked about the... In fact, before this entire segment, there's another segment I want to react to because I talked to Tim Pool about Kash Patel and the Chamber of Evidence. We were making jokes prior to this because I knew my question was going to be contentious. And that's what I want to say here is, yes, Brett's absolutely correct. Let's have some fun. Let's make the news entertaining. It shouldn't always be doom and gloom, even when a lot of things in the world are gloomy. You got to make fun when you can. You got to have entertainment when you can. I fully agree with them here. I just think that there's a lot of important stories. There's a lot of important stories that they could be covering, should be covering, and they shouldn't be saying that there's no news when there's plenty of news that people will show to them. Plenty. I will show Tim articles every day if I had a direct line to him. If it's that hard to find news, I will help him find news. I seem to have a pretty good knack for finding news, I guess.
Here's the other thing too. Timcast News, the principal story, which we're doing at 3 p.m., and Timcast IRL have always been 100% the top trending story of the day. Always. Rare exceptions are extremely slow news days where nothing was happening, and I had to pick a story like bubonic plague returns to California or something. But it has been always that we sit down and say, what's the big story of the day? And of course, today, the biggest story was that a GOP councilman was doused in gasoline and set on fire. And it's like, but everyone's talking about that. Yeah, because we've only ever talked about what the trending story is. Eventually, we'll become obsolete and go out of business because nobody needs the news anymore. It just doesn't matter. Not to mention, nobody wants to hear it anyway. So as more and more new channels emerge, more and more podcasts are created, people are going to be like, this person doesn't talk about what I think is important. I'll find someone who does. And then you end up with people who only talk about Israel. One issue matters to them more than anything, Israel, and they will only watch people talk about Israel because nothing else is news. That's it. Anyway, I do appreciate the call, though.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having the conversation with me. I'll think about it. I'm gonna look back and watch it. But of course, I'll get out of your guys' hair quickly. Just want to shout out, of course, Tyler Today News. You guys can watch me over there. Now the largest and fastest growing channel to stem from Tim's Discord community, actually.
Right on.
Awesome, man.
Talk about news stories, conduct interviews, play video games. Interviewed Ian Crossland recently. And thank you guys. Have a good night.
Cheers,
Thanks
bud.
for calling in. To the people saying one, I'll do this. For 1 week, I will not cover any top trending stories, and Timcast IRL will not talk about the top news of the day. The issue is, we had, I think, like 52,000 concurrent viewers on tonight's show on IRL. I guarantee you, if we choose a non-topical news story, something that we just think is important, viewership will be slashed by 30%. People are going to be like, I don't want to watch it. It's the 1% rule. Most people enjoy, and they come to watch Timcast IRL as a news source where we cite the news and then comment on it. But then there are some people who are more politically inclined, and they're going to be like, I already know this. I don't need to click on that. But most people don't and won't. So we'll play, and then I'll do this. What's tomorrow, Thursday? I will pick random stories of interest instead of top trending news. And then when the clips get 20 to 30% of the views they normally get, and then YouTube basically algorithmically nukes my channel, I'll do it. Whatever. So again, Tim comes back around with a bit of a straw man. I'm not asking him to cover stories that he's not going to get attention on. I'm asking him to cover stories that I feel as though he should care about and other people do care about. That was the whole point of this. I'm not telling Tim not to cover trending stories. Yes, cover trending stories. I want your channel to grow. That's the goal of my channel even, is to grow. I want more information getting out to as many people as possible. That's the whole reason of me starting the show. I'm sure that's the reason why Tim does this show, not just for money, but he also has fun getting this information out to people and having these conversations. That's the whole goal of this. So no, I don't want Tim's channel to get nuked because of
talking about stories nobody cares about. My point is, why not talk about the trending stories that are going to get your channel a bunch of views, and then talk about the very important stories that everyone should care about? Why not do both? You can do both. I see how much work Tim puts into his show every day. He puts out so many different segments. It's insane how much work this guy does. All I'm asking for is maybe just even one show out of the day not be trending news. Just make it something that you feel as though everyone should know about. That's what I'm trying to do on my show, but I don't have the platform that Tim does. The only point that I had, the only reason I brought up this question was because Tim was complaining about a lack of news as of late, and I just wanted to bring to the forefront that there is a lot of news, there's a lot of access to news, there's a lot of people that are willing to help him get these news stories out there, and he doesn't have to just cover these trending topics. I think his audience is here for Tim. They're not just here for those trending topics, and that was the whole point of this. So no, I don't want Tim's channel to get nuked because of the topics he's covering. I want him to cover things that will benefit his channel while also covering things that he actually does care about.
Like, I've been in this business for 15 some odd years, knowing that, like, the YouTube algorithm and all that stuff. And the harsh reality is that, like, Casey Neistat would put boobs, and Philip DeFranco would put boobs in all their videos, and it worked. And Mr. Beast would have his mouth hanging open. And even Mr. Beast said closing his mouth is the difference between 50 million views or less. There are people who, like, mock Benny Johnson because his thumbnails are so ridiculous. Someone's always got mascara running down their face, and they're all crying, and they're holding cell phones every time. And Benny's always just absolutely shocked. And then he gained 2.2 million subscribers in 3 months. He gets 500,000 on every single video, and he is the fastest growing political personality in the country. And you can say, yeah, well, his videos are dumb. And he will laugh all the way to the bank as he becomes more influential than you in politics. And people start going to him to ask him what ideas he thinks should be prominent in politics. And then when you get angry because your political ideas don't make it, he'll say, I played the game, boy. I played the game. You didn't. So you can find that balance. Like I said, we still talk about the AI stuff, and we'll talk about stories that we think are important. But you pick and choose. You can choose to be like, meh. I got to be honest. I want to talk about Magic the Gathering. I'm not kidding. There's a lot of woke, weird stuff going on. And I remember when Magic banned Jeweled Lotus, causing a massive secondary market collapse, which defrauded millions of dollars from the player base. If I made a video about that, I'd get 20, 30,000 views.
Well, it's like even on our channel, like we've gone so much into like internet trends and stuff like that. It's like if I want to talk about Superman, I know that nobody cares other than me. Like in our audience now, because the audience that we've cultivated cares about internet trends and the things that we choose to talk about.
It's not just my attitude is we opine on the top trends of the day, and the segments that I produce are the big stories and my opinions on them, and that's what I've always done, and that's just it. But I do think the media is collapsing.
The last thing I'll say on this is overall I did enjoy the conversation. I wish my question was addressed, but I did overall like the conversation I had with Tim, Phil, Brett, and everyone on the panel. I still disagree with Tim, but if anything did come from this conversation, it does seem as though Tim is realizing that he has more access than the average journalist. He's also realizing that some of the stories that I brought up are more important than he initially believed. Easiest example would be the Visa MasterCard story revolving around video games and stuff like that. He's now talking about it directly because of my phone call. So if anything came from this, it's at least that. But again, why did I bring this question up? Why did I even have this conversation with Tim? Tim has recently made statements about a lack of news aggregation, and I wanted to address him directly as someone with a large platform that talks about news, why he isn't talking about some of these stories that are major stories that have sweeping implications for the entire country. So it's not that I want him to talk about things that I care about. I felt a type of way by his statements where he's saying that there's no news, while me, I'm doing my show. It's not at the level that Tim's at, but I myself, I'm one person, and just me in the mornings can find more news for myself to cover. And if Tim is complaining about a lack of news, it leads me to believe that he's not finding enough news stories. So that's why I brought this to him. I made similar comments earlier in this video. The reason I brought this to Tim was because of recent comments he made. I thought I was bringing something to Tim that he had missed, not that I was bringing something to Tim that he had seen, not cared about, and now I'm trying to get him to talk about it because I care about it. That again, I've said it multiple times throughout this video, but me did not enter this equation. I did not enter this equation when I wanted to ask this question. The only thing I thought about was, Tim said there's no news. Well, here's a massive story that he can make an entire show out of. The RFK Jr. Oregon story is a story that he can make multiple shows out of. There's so many different branches that you can go down with that story because it is so horrific. And you could make jokes about it. There's jokes you can make about it too. It doesn't have to be a horrific doom and gloom story. There's a lot of things you can go with that. Overall, great conversation, and I hope all of you take what you will from this conversation. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I look forward to having more conversations like this with Tim in the future. I doubt my next phone call for the Uncensored will be this contentious, but I don't know. Maybe I will see myself in person with Tim someday soon, and I'll be able to ask some questions like this or have an argument again with him, but in person. I would love to talk with Tim and the cast in person. It's a lot more different when you're having that conversation through a phone call. It's a lot easier to interrupt someone. It's a lot easier to miscommunicate through phone calls. If I was there in studio and in person, I think the conversation would have gone a lot easier, and Tim would have been able to understand my point a lot better. But maybe someday I'll get to join him in studio or join him somewhere and actually have that conversation with him, because I guarantee you he has a lot of insight that I would love to hear about, especially as I continue my journey trying to do what he's doing. It's people like Tim and Steven Crowder and all the other commentators I've watched over the years. It's people like them that made me want to do things like this. The reason I'm making videos is because of people like Tim. So that's why I wanted to have this conversation tonight, and I wanted to get his insight on things. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you guys enjoyed my commentary on this, and I hope you guys enjoyed my phone call. Again, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. I hope you guys have a great day.